Thank you all for joining the monthly Tempo think tank. We've brought it back the past, I think about a year now. We've been pretty consistent with our think tank. My name is Nancy Spooner. I am founder of Tempo Live Events. If we haven't met, I see a couple of new faces in here, which is really cool, and a lot of returning faces, which is always an honor too. So the think tank was born out of the need for socialization during the pandemic. It was a happy hour that went awry, I always say. It was a happy hour that actually turned into a think tank where we just started sharing best practices on how to survive in that pandemic and how to call shows from home and produce from home and what is Zoom, what is vMix, all that stuff. And it has boosted Tempo's business. Tempo is my side hustle. I'm a freelance event producer, show caller, deck manager, and I started Tempo as a side hustle. And then fast forward to the pandemic and the growth of Tempo post-pandemic, this is now my full-time job. And I side hustle as a show caller and deck manager. My passion in life, I just was late to this call with you a little bit, Jessica, because I just met another person in staffing and event production at a company in New York City, and she was my soul sister. Like, we just love getting you all work, no matter the cost, whether it's with us or with somebody else. And it's just a blast. I love Tempo and I love the people I get to meet, and I love watching you all fulfill your dreams as freelancers. And that's kind of been the theme of the think tank, is just how to be better freelancers, how to stay free and enjoy this life that we have as freelancers. So I'm going to keep bringing people in to tell us different ways to make our life better as freelancers. We've got a history of think tanks, if you ever want to see them, about insurance, liability insurance, and how to get it and why to have it. And if you want to be an LLC or an S Corp, and why, and what the difference is. And this one's negotiation. We had how to market yourself better as a freelancer was our last think tank last month. I'm always happy to share those. They're always replayed in the newsletter, but I have an archive of them. They're on Slack. If you're not in our Slack channel, that is where Tempo posts most of our jobs. We go there first and give the 1,000 plus freelancers on Slack first dibs at jobs on our Slack channel. What I want to do real quick before we get going with Jessica today is just have you guys real quick tell us who you are, where you are, and what you do. Something as simple as I'm Nancy Spooner. I am founder of Tempo Live Events. I'm in San Diego, California, actually in Encinitas, and I'm an event show caller and deck manager. And then I'll just go round robin and you guys do the same thing, and then we'll get going with our topic today. So Christina, go for it. Christina Stark.
I am Christina Stark. I'm located on Maui, originally from Escondido. So, but yeah, been here for 4 years. I'm a graphic designer and a graphics op, so I can do things on the fly for Keynote and PowerPoint, which happens to be very often in most live shows. So able to do that.
Awesome. I did see you just joined. Thank you. I was very jealous of you. I was like, oh, she gets to live in Hawaii. It's awesome.
Aloha.
Thank you. It's perfect. Kate Stewart.
Hi, Kate Stewart, located in the San Francisco Bay Area, primarily a show caller. Been in the business for years of both live theater and events. Just happy to be here.
Nice, Kate. Glad to have you here. Julie Van Loo. We go way back.
Hey, Nancy. Nice to see you as always. Alana, nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Very cool. I am currently based in North Carolina. I'm about an hour and a half outside of Asheville. Just moved out here from San Diego. So I am now working both West Coast and East Coast. Happy to jump around and do whatever. Still mostly commercials, video production, but also live event as possible. So getting rerouted in a new place.
You totally are. Well, welcome to the East Coast. I didn't know you left me. I was like, what? All right.
I'm there anytime you need me.
I believe you. And speaking of which, Sal's from San Diego.
Yes, Sal Agostino from San Diego. I'm a show caller, stage manager, depending on what side of the pond you're on. I do technical directing as well as production management and site coordination. I'm a little bit of everything. I'm glad to be back, Nancy.
It's great to see you. Alicia.
Hello, Alicia Druby. I am based in the greater Seattle area in Washington. And I'm Jessica. I'm down in White Center, but I'm new to town, so I like to travel for coffees. And I work as an on-site event manager. I am event planner's best buddy, super helpful, doing any kind of anything. And I am excited. I haven't been on Think Tank in a while, so hello again.
It's good to see you. Another California Exeter, Alana has left the building. Alana,
Yes, also from San Diego, now in Boise, Idaho. And I am a creative producer, recently programming producer, panels producer, formerly commercials producer, and sometimes production therapist, as I sometimes say, unofficially.
I believe you. Awesome. Viviana, hello.
Hello. So this is my first think tank ever. I am based out of the DMV, so Maryland, so East Coast. I have been in the events industry for a little bit over 10 years. I mostly specialize in large conferences, citywides, expos, and marketing activations, but I've done a little bit of everything. And I'm excited to listen in.
Awesome. How'd you find Tempo?
Through Opus.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's right. Okay. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Vanessa Noon.
Hi, I'm a show caller stage manager based out of Los Angeles, special events, broadcast, all those good things. It's been a while, so it's good to see everyone.
Good to see you too. Mikey.
Hey everyone, I'm Mikey Porsche. I'm based in Las Vegas. I come from a talent background. I'm a retired professional dancer, currently still working as an actor in independent film. But in the events world, I work as a room producer and a deck manager, and I absolutely love doing it. And it's super fun. I love going around working with new people and traveling and doing all that fun stuff. And I especially love working with Nancy and Tempo. And if it were up to me, what I'd be doing full time would be either doing my little independent films or working as a clown for Cirque du Soleil.
Oh my gosh. At least you'll like that one. That's so cool. Well, thanks for joining. It's good to see you. Carmen.
Good to see you too.
Hi, Carmen.
Hi, long time no see. I was supposed to have oral surgery today, so I wasn't going to be here, but I did not. So
Oh, good.
I'm excited for many reasons.
Yeah.
I work at in audio as a client A2, and I used to always be an A2 that would also double as an ASM, and now I'm doing a lot of ASM and deck manager work on my own separately from that, so I can kind of bridge both worlds because those departments often work closely together anyhow. Also happy to do anything else you may think of that you just need a person who enjoys being on show site to do. And it's nice to see you, Nancy.
It's good to see
Oh,
you too.
I'm in Richmond, Virginia, so not far from Viviana.
That's right. Very nice. I'm glad. I love that you're an A2 and an ASM, right? Like, perfect. We need more of you. We need more people like you. I need more A2s that can ASM in. So I just love that. Okay, Rachel.
I am Rachel User, and I've known Nancy since the Covered Wagon days. She took me under her wing when I was 21 years old. And so it's been, 25 years at this point?
At least 15, I think.
Yeah, just 2
15
years actually. And I am a producer, executive producer, show caller, deck manager. I kind of do it all. And I'm also a coach, and my focus is really on the freelance community and creatives. And so that's what I do.
And she'll be the next guest of the next think tank. We'll talk about that at the end. So, hi, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm in Minneapolis. I'm technically full-time somewhere, but I freelance on the side. So I come in and out of this community, but I think it's a wonderful community that Nancy has cultivated here. So I try really hard to stay involved. And this topic of negotiation happens everywhere all the time. And so I was very intrigued by it, and I am here. But I, similar to Rachel, wear a lot of hats. I grew up through stage management and production management and theater. So I do a bit of that in show calling, but also content production and EP work. So that's me.
Oh, it's good to see you. Thanks for hopping in. Elizabeth.
Hello, hi there. I'm Elizabeth Bloodworth. I am based in San Francisco, but I'm a New Yorker, and I kind of like to get back to, snow and pizza, more of that in my life. But I'm an event manager and event producer.
Thanks for joining us. How'd you meet Tempo, Elizabeth?
I met you at IMAX.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, one
Okay.
of those like little round, speed dating things.
That's right. That was fun. I'm so
That was
glad you're
fun.
here. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
I wondered where I
Yeah.
saw you from. All right, who have I? Gabriella, I don't know if you are going to turn your camera. Oh, there you are. But you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I'm Gabriella Langua. I'm an event and video producer, and I'm based in San Diego, Encinitas area, like Nancy. And I've known Nancy forever, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who's known me
absolutely.
longer, you or Rachel. It's probably a tie. Really, and Alana, you're up there too. And Julie, oh my gosh, we all go way back. That's kind of fun. Those are television and film days.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
see, Vanessa. Is it Corinne or Corinne? Corinne.
It's
Hey,
Corinne.
Corinne. Hey, Corinne.
Hey everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks
Good
for
to see
having
you.
me. I am an associate producer, a stage manager, and I dabble in the outdoor event industry as well as music festival industry, artist transportation management, backline coordinator, vendor manager, and overall on-site fun person to have. So thank you guys for having me. This is my first think tank.
First time caller, long time listener.
Yes,
Thanks.
ma'am.
Thanks for being here. You just exhausted me. Like that's hard stuff that you do. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
That's tough. That's really cool. All right, who else? Jill Brown. Jill, are you here? Going once, going twice. Jill,
She
you're
said
muted, are you?
she's listening from Chicago, can't have the screen on today.
Oh, got it. Thank you. It's like someone's reading the chat for me. Michelle Smith, are you in Orlando multicasting on the call, but looking forward to hearing this group? Okay. You're excused, Michelle, and Mike. Mike.
Hi, my name's Mike Ogg. Sorry, my camera's not on. I just got back from an event and haven't had a chance to take a shower. I am a independent production manager, site coordinator, and I do custom structures. I specialize in large scale outdoor events and typically free and open to the public events. This is the first time attending one of these, so checking it out.
Thanks for checking it out. How'd you find Tempo, Mike?
A friend of mine recommended me looking into you, Tina Wright.
Okay, cool.
Who
Well,
I
tell her
think
thank you.
used to be out of New York. I think she's in San Diego now, and I'm on the East Coast, mostly DC and New York area.
Okay, got it. Mike and Sal, you guys might have a lot to talk about. You remind me of Sal, like the stuff that you just said. Anyway, you just let's meet. I just can't stop connecting people. I can't help it. It's in my blood. Okay, so that's us. That's Jessica. This is a good sample of Tempo for sure. Freelancers from all walks from theater to live event to television production, video production background. Jessica and I met because my childhood best friend, husband's best friend, basically married Jessica. And so we met through my best friend. And Belinda does a lot of content work for Tempo as of late, which has been pretty fun. And then Belinda's like, I think Jessica would be a really good guest for the Tempo think tank. Jessica owns Vela Coaching up in Seattle, and she is going to give us her little spiel on negotiation. So I'll let her do a better introduction of herself because you're always better introducing yourself, I think, than I am. But thank you so much for being here. This is a very casual event. You guys can keep your cameras on, raise your hand, open your voice, like just talk. At any point, don't worry about it. This has always been laid back. It's not a webinar. This is a group discussion. So you do your thing. We're ready for you, Jessica.
Okay, awesome. Love it. I primarily spend most of my time working with either people from tech or manufacturing, so it's really cool to hear new language and lingo, and I admire what you do. I've done just as part of companies that I've worked for in the past, helped with big events, and the amount of work is just insane. So I have healthy respect for what you do, and I'm really grateful that you're here. We're going to be talking about the art and really the science of negotiation today. I suspect you're all in different spectrums when it comes to negotiating. So I invite you to just come with an open mind and either take on some new learning, maybe get back to basics or refreshers. There are, as you probably know, a bazillion books on negotiations and methodologies. There are degrees people can get. They can be hostage negotiators, you know, all the way on down to I negotiate with my kids 1,000 times a day and my partner every day. So I'm encouraging you to consider like, hey, we're not doing this full time, but we have to negotiate throughout our day. So what are some ways to break this down and think of frameworks, and how do we prepare for these conversations in a meaningful way? I founded Vela Coaching in the middle of the pandemic. I wanted some flexibility to my role. And so I joined, I left my corporate America job that I had been in for 20 plus years. And now I just can't, I love the flexibility. I can't imagine going back. And one of the things that I found over the last 3 years is that I really focus on helping women reach their full leadership potential. And part of how I do that is I have frameworks that are applicable to everybody. You know, every person faces unique challenges in the workplace, as you do based on industry or gender or race. But a lot of what I do encompasses leadership frameworks that work for everyone, including this negotiation framework that we're going to walk through today. So I'm just excited to be here and have the opportunity to maybe share a different way of looking at negotiations, or a different model, or a new model. And we're really going to spend the next 40 minutes or so just kind of talking through the definitions of negotiation, making sure we're on the same page. What are the elements of negotiating? And then I'm going to have you do some work. So when we get there, I'm going to let you know, ask you to tell me, if you can't be in a breakout group. It's not going to be anything major. Hopefully it'll be an opportunity for you to get to know one another, but you'll be doing a little bit of work as I present today, because I think so much of this work is really making this work for yourself and your own scenarios. So I'll be having you keep that in mind as we go through today. Before we get started, in the chat, I would love to just get from you, what are some words that come up for you when you're thinking about the word negotiation? So this kind of helps me get a baseline of where people are at. Any kind of word, whether it's emotion, whether it's the frequency of how you do this. In the chat, compensation. Yep. What else comes up when you hear that word? Salary, lowball. Okay. Compromise, terrifying. Yep. You're not alone, Carmen. A lot of people find it really scary. Alignment. Haggling, stress, self-worth. Yeah. You got to value yourself so you can really go into negotiations in a good position. Balanced. Yep. Anything else come up? Yeah. So many different words. Like negotiation can bring up different connotations for all of us. And trust, being tough in practice. Yeah. Yes. All of those, right? Like we all have our own connection to negotiating. And I think it's important as we go through today to be aligned on a common definition for it. Like, what am I talking about when I'm talking about negotiations today? And the definition that I gravitate towards the most, that I really like, is from the book Getting to Yes, which is, it's a back and forth communication designed to reach an agreement when you and the other side have some interests that are shared and others that are opposed. And I think that's really it. Like if we pull out any feelings we have around it and our experiences with it, this is basically what it is, right? We live in this world where we will be compromising in negotiations. We don't live in a world anymore of someone has to win and someone has to lose, right? So I love this back and forth idea for negotiating. And some of you talked about that, right? Balance is huge. And as we go through today, I want you to just think about this question. You don't have to put it in the chat. I just want you to either write it down or hold it in your mind. What is something that you want to negotiate right now? Something that's coming up for you. It could be in the next day. It could be in the next week. That's the scenario that I want you to consider as we're going through the day. It could be personal. Maybe it's not professional. Sometimes we might be good at negotiating professionally and have a harder time personally, and that's okay. And I love this little comic here that everybody gets teddy bears as a negotiation tactic. I haven't heard of that one, but I've heard of like the chairs, like you sit in the tall chair, make them sit in the short chair. All kinds of crazy things people do to try to give themselves an advantage. And we're not going to be going through those today. All right. So at its core, what are the main elements of negotiation, right? Like the first one that everyone thinks about and the one that might be the most terrifying is that conversation. Like we all know that when we negotiate, we're going to have a conversation at some point with the people that we're negotiating with. But when we think about the elements of negotiation, that is a piece of a larger puzzle. And the two other huge elements that we'll spend time thinking about today and talking about today are the mindset. Like, what are you thinking going into that negotiation, right? Are you thinking it's going to be terrifying? Thinking it's going to be tough, or you need to be tough, right? So how does that come into play when you're negotiating? And then planning. How have you really prepared for and planned for the negotiation? Because we don't just go into the conversations cold, like maybe we thought about price, but what are all the other things that we need to consider when we're planning? So those are really the three big things to consider when negotiating. And when we're talking about this today, the conversation is going to be the very last thing we go through. Let's take some time and dive into mindset and dive into planning. So we're ready. Okay. So in the chat really quick, when you're looking at this picture, what do you see in the chat? What do you see in this photo? I'm curious. Lady with her head turned. Okay. French girl, a woman. Is the woman old or young? Okay, young. Somebody sees both. Okay. Does anybody see an old lady? Yep, some people see both. Yeah, there are two. Yeah, okay. There are two images in this picture, right? There is the old woman who whose nose is bigger on the right hand side. You can see both of her eyes, like an eyelash in her other eye. And she's looking down. And then there's a younger woman that's looking sideways, where you can see a jawline and an ear and her eyelashes, right? So they're both right. And at the end of the day, this is all about our perception, like how we look at this photo. We're going to believe that we're right. So whether I see the old lady or whether I see the young lady, we're both right. And that's exactly what happens when we go into these negotiation situations, right? Like we have our own filters and beliefs about how things are going to go or how things should go. So does the person we're negotiating with. And we're both right. So we've got to make sure that when we go into a negotiation situation, we have the right mindset and the right perspective on this so that we can go in with an open mind, because that's really important. Yeah. Oh, there she is. Elizabeth's like, the old lady. Yeah, once you see them, you can't unsee them. And for a lot of you, you've probably already seen this photo before. It's amazing how many people have not, though. So I never assume.
I've seen it before, but I couldn't find the old lady.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Like, I know there's two here.
Look at the neck. The neck is the nose. All right. So when it comes to mindset, I love this quote by Stephen Covey, right? We think we see the world as it is, when in fact we see the world as we are. Which is true, right? This is so much about our perception. And one of the other things he talks about, which I completely believe in, is this idea that what you see, that perception, is going to drive what you do, your behavior, which is going to ultimately drive what you get or your results. So if your perception is, I need to go in tough and strong, what I do might be tough or too strong or not open. Am I really listening if I go in with that attitude? Maybe, but something to think about. And then what results is that going to get? Or if I go in terrified, I'm really scared. I'm not sure how this can go. I don't know what they're going to say. My behavior might be more hesitant, might lack confidence, and might ultimately not get the results that I'm looking for. So having that moment to really think about what your perception is on the situation and what your mindset's going to be is the first step in getting ready for that negotiation. So if you have a journal, a notebook, piece of paper, pen or pencil, something in front of you, or even if you just want to hold these questions in your mind, I'm going to give you, we'll just do 2 minutes, just for time's sake. Give you a couple of minutes to just answer these 3 questions for yourself, right? So you have that situation in mind where you're going to negotiate coming up. Ask yourself what your perspective is. Be honest. Maybe your perspective is, I've worked with this person before and they're so hard. They're mean. They never do, you know, they never give me anything that I'm looking for. Okay, that's fair. Just be honest about that. How might that perspective influence how you go about the negotiation? And in what ways, if any, might you need to shift your perspective? Maybe your perspective is fine. Maybe knowing what they're going to be like or anticipating is going to really help you be ready, but still keep an open mind, and that's okay. So ask those 3 questions, couple minutes. You can turn your cameras off if you have them on. And then I'll bring you back and we'll move on to the next activity. You should have a timer up in your screen now. New app. I'm excited about that. Final 10 seconds, start to wrap your thoughts on this. You can always come back to the questions. I'll make sure Nancy has the deck to share with you. Okay. So is anybody willing to share, jump off mute and share what you noticed when you did this thinking about your perception? Viviana.
So I would say I feel more comfortable when I'm the client with a vendor in negotiating versus when I am the vendor or as a freelancer. And I said, I feel like I sell myself short when I am negotiating as a freelancer. I think I just need to value my work more.
Right. So your perspective is to kind of shift that so that you're valuing your work more. And because if you have that perspective where you're not worth as much, then that's how you're going to go into those conversations, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So just that awareness, right? As we go into these conversations, that awareness with, you know, how we might shift depending on our role in a negotiation might influence that perspective is so important. And I encourage people to do this check-in every time, right? And even it could vary from moment. You could just be having a crappy day. So your perspective on life in general, it's not going well, right? So really important to check in with yourself on that, because these conversations can be, really critical based on who we're talking to and what the negotiation is about. All right, next element that I like to consider is just this really simple model. Like I'm a big believer in keeping things simple. And this idea that you can mind map both sides of your negotiation. So the first step is to think about, what is your side? Like, are you really clear on the outcomes you want and why? Right. So Viviana, once you realize I do have a ton of value and this work I do is worth more than I've been trying to sell it out for, what are your outcomes, right? What do you want from that and why? So that you're clear, because sometimes people, even just figuring out the why behind this or what outcomes we want can be hard. So take time to think about that. Think about what value you add. Like, what is your unique value that you can bring to the conversation? It might be that you're uniquely positioned in the area or in the industry or your experience. Like, what are those unique things and what's the value that you add? And then take some time to map out your options. Like, what is the best case scenario? You could wind up with X dollars and a referral. I don't know. What is the medium scenario where you'd be like, okay, I'm good with that. Wasn't exactly what I was shooting for, but this will be fine. What is the worst case scenario? Maybe it's a minimum dollar amount, right? What is, like, if it's below that threshold, it's not even worth your time, right? So think about those options. And then think about I call them no way scenarios. Like, there is no way I'll be able to make this work. There's no way I'm flying across the country to do this work for this amount of money, because it will just be a wasted week. Like, it's not worth it. So be comfortable, because then when you go into that negotiation, you know what your bottom line is and what you're willing to walk away from. And be creative. Like, hey, maybe I'll do it for less work, but I still have a minimum bar and I would like referrals or a testimonial or whatever. Like, I want to come up with a few things that still show my value, even though I'm reducing my costs. And consider any outside choices. Do you have, are there on those dates during that time frame, are there any other potential clients in the hopper? So you don't have to take this work. And then what's non-negotiable? So this is like, I think of things like policies, contracts. Is there anything that, it's just not going to be on the table to discuss or compromise on? And then I ask you to do the same thing from their side. So put yourself in the client's shoes. Based on what you know about them, try to answer these questions. Like, what are their priorities and goals? Where are they coming from? What outcomes do they want to achieve? Who are the decision makers and other stakeholders? And are you talking to the right people? And how do you know? What's the procurement process like? Or are there any other business processes or legal processes that you need to keep in mind that might influence how you work together? It might be time to set you up in a system. Do you have that? Do you need more, or do they want more time from you than you have to give them? What objections might they have? And don't just think about the financial ones. There might be some other things, like whether it's dates or scope or resources. Just think those through so you're ready. And then what is it that they want from you? They've reached out to you for a reason. They see that you have value. So take some time to think about, remind yourself, right, that they ultimately see value in you and the work that you do, because they reached out and you're having these conversations. So what is that? What is it that they're looking for? And then explore, I like to call it this space in between. So there's going to be stuff for both of you that's important to keep in mind, like the relationship between you. Are they new, or have you worked with them before? And do you have experience working with them? What are your shared goals to both make it a successful event? What might some of your opposing goals be? Like budget, maybe they have less budget to work with than you want. And what's the risk and reward on both sides? Like, I've reduced my rate before, knowing that the client that I was working for could open doors for a whole bunch more work in another company, right? So the risk of reducing my rate was actually outweighed by the reward of, oh my gosh, if I can knock it out of the park, this could lead to a ton of referrals, and that's great for business. And then consider what emotions might get involved. Like maybe look in the past and go, last time I talked to this person, I started noticing I got really upset when we were talked about blah, blah, blah. Or every time I negotiate, I find myself getting really nervous or scared or not sure how to respond to these things. So just kind of be prepared for that, and then be prepared to think about ways that you can deal with that as they come up. Okay. So the way I like to work with this is just by building a simple mind map. I'm going to send you a link in the chat. I'm hoping that you can all access it. Here, it should be shared with everybody. Give you a second to pull that up. And it's just a handout sheet. It's a PDF handout sheet. And one of the sheets looks like this, the diagram with the arrows. Okay, and what you're going to do now for that same scenario where you were doing your mindset work a minute ago, I just want you to take some time and fill out this mind map. What do you know about your side? What do you know about their side? And put question marks if you don't know, like, oh, that'd be a good question to get answered. And then what do you know about that space in the middle? All right. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that. Let me know if you have any questions, pop off mute. 5 minutes to do that, and then come on back. And we are going to spend some time sharing these with other people at the end. So if you have questions, you might also be able to ask the partner that you work with at the end of our session. And I'll get that timer going.
And Alicia wants to know about that timer. I'm watching you, Alicia. You like light up.
Oh, with the timer?
Oh, yeah.
It's a tool. It's a tool for Zoom, Alicia. I just discovered it the other day.
I'm always excited. I keep the countdown clock running on my Zoom screen all the time, or the count up clock, just because I'm a time watcher. I love it.
Yeah, that's smart.
People
I'm like,
need timers.
They do. I'm sad that I just figured this out.
Hey,
really sad.
Better to have
Better
it.
late than never.
Yeah, once you got it.
Okay, 20 seconds left. Wrap up your final thoughts on this, and then we'll move on. Here we go. There it is. Okay, let me get that timer off. All right, so you've spent a ton of time already thinking about this. What's your perception going in? And what do you know about both sides? Even the question marks, right? This is all important stuff to think through. The last element is the conversation. So now we're landing at the conversation itself. And what I really appreciate is this framework by Carrie Gallant. She calls it her diamond negotiation structure. She's done a ton of work. She's a lawyer, ton of work on negotiations. And, basically what she says, which I completely agree with, is just be prepared for the structure of the conversation, right? When you go into the conversation, you're going to open it. There's going to be some context setting, some framing and alignment on what it is that you're there to discuss. And just get yourself crisp on that. And this can almost be a bit of a script, right? Plan it out ahead of time. And then spend some time asking in the beginning some good questions and listening while also advocating yourself. So there's kind of this balance between, hey, what do I know about the situation? Here's what we've talked about in the past. We're here to discuss, the rates or the scope or the time frame of this event that we're doing. And then, balance that out with advocacy. Here's like my messages. I want to make sure it's clear. I'm uniquely positioned to do this work. Here's where I've done this kind of work before. Here's my location, industry, whatever all of those points are, to advocate for yourself. So you're still continuing to remind them that you are qualified, very well qualified to do this work. And then you will, as part of that kind of flow back and forth, you'll start to identify where you agree. Like there's going to be common ground. We agree on where the location of this event, the type of resources you need, the type of help I can provide, etc. But then you're going to spend the majority of that time pulling apart the differences. We don't agree on rate, or we don't agree on scope, or we don't agree on how many resources are needed. All of those things are connected, right? So that's where you want to spend the bulk of the time of the discussion. It's not going to be in the stuff you agree on. It's going to be stuff that you don't. And that's the hardest part of the conversation. You're like, ooh, that's the tough part. But you can consider it like a brainstorming discussion. Like here's where you are, here's where I am. Great. Let's talk about all these different options. How could we make this work? What are some ideas? Maybe I'm willing to, for the rate that you're looking for, I'm willing to, it's okay for me to reduce scope. Maybe you have your own project manager or slide runner, or you've got someone in-house that might be able to do this work. Whatever it is, just kind of think about those differences and come up with some problem solving for that. And then when you're doing that, you consider brainstorming. Like it might be that you want to diagram stuff out on a whiteboard or online or in a notebook, whatever it is. Like be creative with how you do that brainstorming, and then make sure you close the discussion tightly. Like you don't want to leave stuff open. So talk about what you've agreed upon, talk about your next steps. Maybe you're going to, great, we've agreed on these points. We're going to come back together and we'll send you a contract by Friday or Monday. Be sure it's clear who is doing what. Like, oh, you're going to go see if you have somebody to do slide running internally. I don't know. Great. We're going to come back next week and have a follow-up meeting and discuss all these areas that we're going to explore. So just make sure that you leave things really tight, who's doing what by when, so that you can get to that point where you can close this deal and move on. If emotions get heated, be okay to feel comfortable pausing the discussion. That is perfectly fine. If you're getting to the point in a discussion, and this is like worst case scenario stuff where you feel like the discussion is not productive anymore or won't be productive, it's okay to pause and come back to it. Like, hey, this is, I can tell we seem to be stuck and not moving forward. Why don't we take a break? Let's come back to this tomorrow or in a week or whatever we agree upon. You don't have to push it forward if it's just like turning in circles and not working for you anymore. So be comfortable doing that. And then in your handouts, you've got not only the diamond structure, but you've also got some conversation prep tables that you can fill out. Now, again, you're not scripting everything out for yourself. Like maybe you think about scripting the opening a bit, but this gives you some things to think about as you're preparing for the conversation and how you might go about, like even for problem solving, you might say, "Ooh, we're meeting in person. I think I'm going to bring a notebook, like a sketch pad, so we can problem solve on paper if we need to," right? So it just gives you some time to plan for that conversation so that you're ready. Okay. So we are going to break out into groups. It's going to be pairs. It's going to be really quick, lightning fast. I'm going to give you about 6 minutes, 3 minutes each to just kind of specifically talk through your mind map. Like, what's the scenario you're going through? And then where can you use some help? Like, that would be the most helpful from your partner. Like, here's a quick overview of my scenario. I'm stuck in this spot. Do you have any ideas for me, or what might I do? So if anybody needs to jump, that's fine right now. I'd love it if you could stay. I'm assuming if you stay that you can join a breakout group. So let me see if I can. Nancy, I do not see breakout groups enabled for you. Normally it's just a drop down.
Oh,
do you not have them set up? Okay, maybe you don't have them set up. Okay, well, why don't
sorry.
That's okay, no worries. We don't have a ton of time. So why don't we just do this? How about if is anybody like curious to get the group's thoughts on their scenario and use the wisdom from the group? What if we did that instead, since I can't break you off? Does anyone like say, hey, you've got like the wisdom of about 10 people here. Where might you be stuck as you're prepping for a negotiation coming up?
Anyone?
I just dropped one in the chat. I'd love your thoughts on like the kind of casual negotiations. Do you know what I mean? Where you're sort of like, hey, let's have because this is kind of where I am. Hey, let's have a conversation about where we are. You know, this is like for booking work, for example, you know, with someone, and then they're just like, hey, what are your, you know, I think that puts me in this position where I'm like, I don't want to go too far. You know, be like, I need to pay this, and this is what I need to know. Do you have any sort of thoughts for like, how do you, because this is such good logic and sort of like level setting things, but like that, hey, it's not formal. It just makes it a little bit tougher. So I'd love the group's wisdom on that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts with those are there's nothing that's ever truly casual in business when it comes to these kind of things. Like, yeah, you're going into a conversation informally based on what you're describing to me. Still kind of, I think it's still good to think in the back of your mind, like, oh, how could this play out? Like, you don't have to be, maybe in the first conversation, you don't feel like you're ready to be explicit about it and really get into the nitty gritty. But ultimately, you've got, based on what you're describing, there's an end game in mind. And maybe it's to potentially get the business or get a referral or whatever you're looking for. So even just thinking out how the conversation can play out is just useful so that there is a bit of prep involved. So you do, even if you don't want to go in and be super formal about it, in the back of your mind, you're kind of trying to make sure you're steering the conversation towards something, ultimate outcome.
Yeah. I guess it's just like, and maybe this is the subtle, like where you're reading the situation of like not wanting to be too firm or too formal or too like, this is what I need, this, and this.
Yes.
You know, because you could sort of box yourself out, either, you know, you lowball or something, or you sort of pin them down in a way that they don't want to be pinned down yet, you know? So it's like that. I think that's what that's my concern, you know, and I get a little nervous about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, I always like to think about just ask a lot of questions, right? Like in those kind of, especially like almost like qualifying or prospecting type of conversations, like make sure you understand the scope of what they're trying to do, where they're coming from, all of the things that are just helpful for you to kind of see if you really have grasp what work would be involved. It's just a starting point. Like you're right. Like you wouldn't really get to the more detailed nitty-gritty conversation until you've agreed like, hey, this is qualified work and we're going to move forward. And there's a whole sales cycle that goes before this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. And then Corinne, is that right?
Yep,
Corinne, you want to pop off mute and share your chat insight?
Sure. You know, I think I've been found in this conversation as well when I'm being approached by a client to where we kind of initially talk about it and they're like, oh, you know, save these dates and let's talk about this in full. And without getting too into the weeds and too into, you know, your rate and everything like that, what I like to do is kind of have the casual conversation to start with, kind of see what their expectations are so that you can understand to then step into the more negotiation phase of it, right? So first step would be casual conversation, see what they're looking for, feel it out if it's going to be a good fit, and then set a time before that meeting ends on everybody's calendar so that you can approach it as a more in a more formal setting. So then you can say, you know, these are all the roles and responsibilities, you know, like just discuss the rate, discuss the contracting, and kind of move on from there. And then at the end of every conversation, you know, just ensure that everybody knows what the next steps are. You know, okay, I look forward to receiving the contract by Friday, or I look forward to meeting with the technical director as the next step. And if I don't hear back from you by, you know, Wednesday, then I'd be happy to send you an email as a reminder.
Yeah, that's great. And that, especially that reminder of even casual conversation, close them with a little bit of formality, right? Let's confirm next steps. What did we, you know, where do we want to go from here? So that you're not just leaving it dangling, that there's something clear about what you're doing next.
I could have used you a couple months ago. I wish I would have had this. Like, I had a client, you all come to me, it's the third year in a show with one of you, a handful of you were on it, maybe not you, but a handful of contractors. And he's like, I don't understand your service fee. Like, what value do you bring to the show? Like, why am I paying the same service fee again? Like, I've paid it, you know, and all you do is sign a contract for them now. And I was like I panic mode, sweating. I didn't know what to say. He's like, maybe we can just like shrink it every year till we can just, then I can just keep your contractor and I was like, well, that doesn't sound right. I can't, I don't know right now. Like, we do need to talk about this, but we didn't set a time to talk about it again. I said, but we'll talk about it. We didn't set an official time to talk about it again. I kept emailing him, but whatever. And then I called a colleague and got the confidence boost who'd worked for him and said, your value, are you kidding me? And he was like, he said, you are sourcing and finding talent. You're interviewing every single person. Like, I wrote it down as the dude told me what my value was, because I couldn't even think of my own value. And now it sits in front of me every day. I have it right up here. And it didn't get a fit. I ran into the dude at a conference. I ran into the client at a conference, and I stood with both feet on the ground and I looked at him and I said, hey, yeah, we never talked about it, but you always ask me my value. And it felt so good to stand there and tell him my value and why and what. And I knew in my heart, this was the right thing. And this is what Tempa deserved. And as of 2 days ago, I think we lost the account, but I don't feel bad about it because I don't want to work for somebody who I've given so much talent to for all these years who doesn't understand our value. But if I would have had this is kind of what I did. It took a long time for me to do it, but this is such beautiful stuff that I will use, because I always turn to my husband, like, what am I supposed to say or do? Like, this will help me think it through. I love this, Jessica. This is so great.
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much. This is
Yeah.
really
I just want
valuable.
to add, because I never thought about that. I think sometimes we don't recognize the value that we do bring. So maybe talking to somebody else who says, hey, you do this and this and this, because that's how the person who brought me into this group just listed off a bunch of stuff for Nancy. And I'm just going, am I that good? You know, that's literally what I just said. Holy cow, I'm a rock star.
Yeah.
But I don't think we believe in ourselves that way. So maybe it's getting it from somebody else's perspective might help us remember that that's the value that we bring. Because I know I'm not just a graphic designer. I do large scale events. I do small, tiny things, but I'm also, I don't have to be on site to create those things. I don't just somebody send me a template and I do it. I show up at the event and it's done perfectly, because that's my skill set for 25 plus years. So I guess I forget that myself, and yet I can pick up a bunch of other things behind stage and whatnot. But it is good to hear, Nancy, that you said that you stood on your feet. I just love that you stood on your feet and like, God damn it, this is what I do. You know, I think that's just one of those things that nice to have that listed out and remind yourself.
Yeah, and this was part of what Jessica put on one of these things. One of the first diagrams, it made me think it perspective, and I got someone else's perspective of who I am and what we do. You guys call me all the time. I say you guys in general. The tempo contractors call me a lot and like, Nance, I don't know what my rate should be for this. And I'm like, well, tell me a little bit about what you want. What do you do? What will get you off the couch? How important is this client? Where can the show end up taking you? Or is this person nice to you? Are they not nice to you? Like, there's so many things involved, and this little stuff that you gave us, Jessica, will really help us break down to know our rate. I mean, I'll give you the range. I'm an open book with ranges. I have a rate card I send to all y'all, but then you got to decide, where is this going to go? And this stuff is so valuable for that. This is awesome. It's 2:00.
Great.
This was
Yeah.
too quick.
I know it was really quick. I really appreciate your time. I'll make sure Nancy has the deck. It might be interesting at some point, Nancy, also to do a sales cycle. I don't know if you've done one of those recently. That could be interesting for folks to think about. How do you get to the negotiation part, right? That's part of it.
Okay.
So
We will
can talk.
definitely talk about that. I also am going to, you just gave me a great idea, and I was telling Rachel Euster this today, like you all give me ideas for think tanks, and I think a think tank is know your worth and have each other bring a buddy, and we'll all give each other like our worth. Like, Alicia, what do I know about you? I know that you and Jessica are gonna have the best cup of coffee. You were such an outgoing and smart individual with so much spunk and talent, and and I barely know Alicia, but I know she's kicked ass. And the one time I got to hire her, when I see her in these think tanks and this book club that I met her in, and it would be so fun maybe just to do that with each other. So that's an idea. And then my other think tank idea is Rachel, who just turned on her camera. Yay, Rachel's got the next think tank, and she's along the lines of knowing your worth. And what is your worth? Tell us what you're gonna talk about, Rachel.
Hi, friends. So as I alluded to in the beginning, I coach freelancers and creatives, and I like to say, and weirdos, which I think we all are in some capacity if we live this career. And so I wanted to do a workshop just about how burnout really creeps up for us, because we think that we have all this freedom, but then we're always chasing the next gig. And so how do you find balance, and how do you figure out that we are a type, and kind of take from knowing that you're that type, how do you take ownership of your own narrative and your own work-life balance? So that's what I want to talk to you all about, and I'm really excited about it.
Yay, it's gonna be good. And it's March 12th, I think. It'll be in Slack channel. It'll be in the newsletter. If you haven't joined Tempo's team officially, that's how you get the newsletter. You just got to jump in our database, join our team from our website. And then the Slack channel is also there, and that's where we send all of our job postings first. So if you want to grab a Tempo job or have the opportunity to grab one, you have to be in Slack, because that's where I start my search. But I'm looking forward to the next think tank. I'm looking forward to sharing this, Jessica. A lot of people wanted to be here that aren't here and had to leave and want to see it. I think this is amazing, valuable stuff that I'm going to use. I'm going to print out and put next to my worth, my little negotiation thing.
Thanks for inviting me. It was nice meeting you all. Good luck.